And Merle Riedel with KLRD Budget Analysis is here to present. Thank you. Welcome to the subcommittee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Merle Riedel. I'm with Legislative Research, and today I'll review the Adjutant General's Department budget request and the Governor's recommendation. We are joined here today by some of the staff from the Adjutant General's Department, including Brigadier General Venardi, the Adjutant General of Kansas. So I'm going to be reviewing the budget analysis. You'll see it as a document with the blue banner across the top that says Adjutant General's Department. Looking on page 1 of that document, about halfway down, just a quick reminder that the Adjutant General's Department provides for the organization and readiness of the Kansas Air and Army National Guard, implementation of statewide emergency management programs, and Homeland Security for Kansas. The Kansas National Guard has approximately 7,000 members across the state working in full-time civilian jobs while performing federal military duty during scheduled training weekends and for more prolonged periods. Agency assists Kansans during events such as winter storms, floods, tornadoes, wildfires, hazardous material incidents, dam failures, and more. Moving on to page 3, I would direct you to the table at the top. That's simply a tabular representation of the agency's request and the Governor's recommendation. If you move on to page 4, we'll look at the 2024 analysis. So this is where we'll go into some of the more details on the agency's changes. You can see legislative approved. So subsequent to the 2023 session, one adjustment was made to the $118.8 million, including $14.3 million from the State General Fund. That was approved for the Adjutant General's Department in 2024. So this adjustment changes the current approved amount without legislative action, and it includes the following. Really one item, SGF reappropriation for a total of $19.2 million was added in FY 2024 due to unspent funds that reappropriated from FY 23. These SGF monies primarily included $17.1 million for construction of a new armory in Hayes, which was delayed due to land procurement. $1.3 million in disaster relief payments that shifted from FY 23 to FY 24, $474,730 for design work associated with remodeling the State Defense Building, and $302,956 for deferred maintenance and facilities rehabilitation projects that was rescheduled for 2024. Looking under the agency's estimate, the agency submits a revised estimate of $169.8 million, including $34.6 million SGF in FY 2024. This is an all funds increase of $31.8 million, including an SGF increase of $1.1 million, above the FY 2024 approved amount. The revised estimate includes 296.6 FTE positions, which is an increase of 3 FTE positions above the 2024 approved amount. The position increase includes the addition of 8.5 FTE positions operating the Nickel Hall Barracks in Salina, and 2 FTE positions in the Starbase Youth Program, which is offset by decreases of 7.5 FTE positions in the emergency management and homeland security programs and infrastructure. The revised estimate includes $8.6 million, including $1.1 million SGF for the following supplemental requests. Item number 2 on page 5, you'll see is the pay plan shortfall. The revised estimate includes $38,288 SGF in FY 2024 to account for a shortfall in appropriations for the legislative pay plan in 2023 SB 25. So the 2023 legislature appropriated funding for the pay plan for all state agencies. That funding fell short. For the Adjutant General's Department, the supplemental of appropriation of $38,288 SGF in 2024 is required to achieve the intended effect of the legislative pay plan. Item number 2 is disaster relief payments. The agency requests $8.5 million, including $1 million SGF to reimburse eligible expenditures of state, local, and nonprofit entities for federally declared disasters. These payments require a 25% state matching rate, 10 of which is provided by the agency. So an increase of 1 million SGF would draw down an additional 7.5 million in federal payments for infrastructure repairs, primarily related to severe winter storms that occurred in April 2017, which impacted 29 counties. Item number 4, the agency requests 22,715 SGF for hosting services concerning a website for the Adjutant General's Department. The contract maintenance and hosting services would accommodate security features and local government interfaces integrated into the recently redesigned sites. So those are the agency's supplemental requests for FY 2023. So we'll move on to some of the other adjustments. So absent the supplemental request, the revised estimate includes an increase of 23.2 million, all from special revenue funds. Significant adjustments are as follows. SDB remodel, or the State Defense Building remodel. The revised estimate includes an increase of 22.6 million, all from Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds for the remodel of the State Defense Building, which houses the Kansas Division of Emergency Management and the State Emergency Operations Center. Project would expand KDEM offices, add classrooms, and a joint information center with press briefing facilities, as well as construct an addition for the State Emergency Operations Center built to Federal Emergency Management Agency storm shelter standards. Moving on to item 6, you'll see other capital projects. The revised estimate includes an increase of 9 million, all for federal funds for capital improvement projects. This 9 million serves as federal match for deferred maintenance and rehabilitation projects among the 39 National Guard armories. Item 7 is Nickel Hall Barracks operation. The revised estimate includes an increase of $556,339, all from special revenue funds, and the addition of 8.5 FTE positions operating the Nickel Hall Barracks, which provides lodging for individuals and units training at the Great Plains Joint Regional Training Center in Salina. The agency notes there's difficulties with maintaining contracted services to operate the barracks, and these expenditures for these positions would be reimbursed with income to the facility. Moving on to the governor's recommendation for FY 2023, the governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate, and she made no changes. Moving on to page 7, you'll see FY 2024 changes from actual expenditures. So much of what we discussed is the change from the FY 24 approved. So if we compare this to last year's actual expenditures, the agency estimates revised expenditures of 169.8 million, including 34.6 million in FY 24. This is an all funds increase of 36.3 million, including an SGF increase of 17.1 million above the FY 2023 actual amount. The SGF increase is primarily attributed to the reappropriation of 17.1 million SGF for construction of the new National Guard Armory in Hayes. So that was originally scheduled to be expended in 23. So that's an expenditure that has shifted to 24. And that project was approved by the 2022 legislature. The all funds increase is primarily attributable to increase of 22.6 million, all from federal ARPA funds for the remodel of the State Defense Building, and 9.7 million, all from FEMA funds for disaster relief payments. The increase is partially offset by a decrease of 11.7 million from non-discretionary federal COVID-19 relief funds. And the increase is further offset by an increase of 8.6 million, all from federal funds for expenditures to construct a new Joint Forces headquarters on Forbes Field in Topeka. So that project occurred in FY 23, and those expenditures would not reoccur for 24. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes FY 23. FY 24, so I can move into FY 25 or stand for questions.
We have any questions? Senator Bellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question on the pay plan, we do have a bill coming.
Correct. Right now, there is House Bill 2495, which would address that pay plan shortfall.
We have a Senate bill also coming.
Yes, I believe so.
I just want to let you know. So we don't need to do anything, Beans. This is going to be addressed in the overall supplemental bill, correct?
That is correct. So either that will be addressed in the supplemental bill or one of those House or Senate bill versions for that pay plan shortfall will pass. So you don't need to delete that out from the agency's request because that's built into those bills.
It's in the bills. Thank you. That's why I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Committee, we got any other questions?
All right, moving on to FY 2025, looking at page 5. Below the table, you'll see the agency's request. The agency requests $92.8 million, including $13 million SGF for FY 2025. That is an all funds decrease of $77 million, including an SGF decrease of $21.6 million below the FY 2024 revised estimate. The request includes 299.6 FTE positions, which is an increase of 3 FTE positions above the 2024 revised estimate. The position increase is for 2 FTE positions in the Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center and 1 FTE position in the infrastructure program, and both of those are related to enhancement requests that we'll review. You can see item number 1 under the list of enhancement requests is the last disaster relief payment. Again, the agency is asking to add $8.5 million, including $1 million SGF, for disaster relief payments related to federally declared disasters. Item number 2, Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center positions. The agency requests 220,000 SGF and 2 FTE positions for the Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center for FY25. The positions include a deputy director of operations and a senior analyst to manage full-time staff and assigned law enforcement representatives and provide analysis of foreign malign activity. So these expenditures would include fringe benefits. Item number 3 is the 190th Civil Engineering Squadron position. Agency requests $64,668, including $16,168 SGF for 1 FTE administrator position in the 190th Civil Engineering Squadron. The squadron maintains facilities at Forbes Field, and the duties for this position would include supply and inventory management, procurement of material, tracking state assets, and custodial contract management. Moving to page 9 at the top, you'll see item 4, again, is a request to continue funding for the website hosting. That totals $22,715 SGF. And item 5 is the final enhancement request. That is for the Office of Emergency Communications. Agency requests $127,000 SGF for the Office of Emergency Communications, which maintains deployable interoperable communications equipment. And that funding is requested to offset elimination of a transfer from the State Highway Fund. So prior to FY 2023, the agency received an extraordinary transfer of $32,000 from the State Highway Fund that was eliminated beginning in FY 23 and partially replaced with SGF, and they're requesting the remainder of that be replaced. Moving on to other adjustments. So absent the enhancement request, the request includes a decrease of $77.3 million, including $22 million SGF in base expenditures. So some of those adjustments include the state defense building remodel. So there's a request of $23.1 million, including $474,730 related to that state defense building, because that's a project that occurs in 2024, does not reoccur in 2025. Item 7 is the new Hayes Armory. The request includes a decrease of $17.1 million SGF for expenditures associated with construction of a new National Guard Armory in Hayes in 24. That does not reoccur in 25. So that construction project, again, will incur in 24, not reoccur in 25. Moving down to the governor's recommendation, the governor recommends $92.7 million, including $12.9 million SGF for FY 2025. That is a decrease of $87,000, all SGF or 0.1% below the agency's FY 2025 request. Recommendation includes 299.6 FTE positions, which is unchanged from the agency's request. The governor's recommendation included the following items. For the Office of Emergency Communication, the governor does not recommend that enhancement of $127,000 to replace elimination of a transfer. And item 11, Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center, the governor recommends $260,000 SGF for 2 FTE positions for the Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center, which is an increase of $20,000 above the agency's request. The increase accounts for operating expenditures associated with those positions, such as computers, cell phones, and training. If we move to page 10, you will see those enhancements and supplemental requests described in more detail. I won't repeat them, but you will also see at the top of page 10 a table representation of those enhancements requests. You can see what the agency asked for and what the governor recommends. So sometimes that's a little more clear to articulate what the governor was actually recommending. I would just note on this page, on page 11, item 5, provides a little bit more detail on some of those positions for the Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center. You will see that $115,000 in salaries and wages expenditures was requested for 1 FTE Deputy Director of Operations position. That position would liaison with federal agencies, coordinate with National Guard intelligence assets, and provide for training, scheduling, and performance evaluations of staff. The position would also develop continuity of operations plan. Right below that, you'll see $105,000 of that request was for 1 FTE senior analyst position to examine foreign malign activity against state and local entities. The position would analyze threats such as intellectual property theft and predatory investments directed at entities associated with law enforcement, critical infrastructure, agriculture, technology, research, and commerce. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my review of the two fiscal years analysis. You can see on page 3 describes some special topics, and after that goes into a more in-depth detail on each program. So I can review those, or I can skip to the final portion, which relates to capital improvements.
Is there any questions from the committee so far? Let's continue.
Okay, I'm going to move to page 23, capital improvements. This is often where significant changes for this department. The Adjutant General's Department is responsible for facilities that include National Guard readiness centers or armories, and the State Defense Building in Topeka, the Great Plains Joint Training Center in Salina, Air National Guard facilities at McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita and Forbes Field in Topeka, and various other facilities. A cooperative agreement between the agency and the Federal National Guard Bureau generally requires a 50% match with state funds, with some exceptions that allow a 25% match rate. Looking below that table for 2024 capital improvements, the agency submits a revised estimate of $65.6 million, including $22.1 million for capital improvements in FY 2024. This is an all funds increase of $31.7 million, including an SGF increase of $27,861 above the 2024 approved amount. The all funds increase is primarily attributable to increased expenditures from federal ARPA funds for the remodel of the State Defense Building. This increase is also attributed to increased federal match funding for rehabilitation and repair projects and deferred maintenance. I want to highlight a few items on here on page 24 under New Hayes Armory. The revised estimate includes $17.1 million SGF for the new armory in Hayes. Expenditures include a land purchase, site development, and construction of a 49,792 square foot National Guard Readiness Center. The current armory is more than 60 years old, located in a floodplain, and lacks adequate capacity to house modern military vehicles. This project was approved by the 2022 legislature. The agency reports that sites were reviewed with consideration given to federal requirements, residential congestion, and distance from utilities and road networks. A tentative offer was recently presented to the seller, and land appraisals are in progress as required by KSA 76-147. And plans for utilizing or repurposing the current armory are in development. And the agency may have a more recent update on the status of the Hayes Armory project. State Defense Building design. The revised estimate includes 474,000 SGF to continue design work concerning the remodel of the State Defense Building in Topeka. And again, that houses the Kansas Division of Emergency Management and the State Emergency Operations Center. That structure was built in 1973. Currently lacks capacity to support state sustained operations during emergencies, lacks sufficient technology and the office and training space. Going to the column under the right, under the Joint Forces Headquarters, JFHQ construction. The revised estimate includes $20,415 to complete construction of a 59,000 square foot Joint Forces Headquarters on federal property at Forbes Field in Topeka. Total construction costs are estimated at $16.5 million, which is entirely funded through federal funds. And then moving down, state defense remodel using ARPA funds. The revised estimate includes $22.6 million, all from Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds, to remodel the State Defense Building. This funding was approved by the State Finance Council on December 21st, 2022 as part of the State Efficiency and Modernization Program. KDEM will be moved to the main level with expanded offices, a joint information center with press briefing facilities, planning space, and classroom. The State Emergency Operations Center and data centers will be housed in a new construction addition built to FEMA storm shelter standards, capable of withstanding 250 mile-per-hour winds, pursuant to federal ARPA guidelines. This project is categorized under the provisions of government services, and funds must be expended by December 2026. And the governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate for capital improvements. For FY25, the agency requests $20 million, including $3.5 million SGF for capital improvements. This is an all funds decrease of $45.6 million, including an SGF decrease of $18.6 million below the 2024 revised estimate. The SGF decrease is primarily attributed to expenditures primarily related to that National Guard facility in Hayes and the State Defense Building remodel. They occur in 24, do not reoccur in 25. Governor concurs with the agency's request for capital improvements. However, the governor recommends merging expenditures for deferred maintenance with expenditures for rehabilitation and repair. This adjustment provides a total of $3.5 million SGF for rehabilitation and repair, which includes all the projects that were previously listed under deferred maintenance and rehabilitation, essentially combining two SGF accounts to achieve the same purpose. And Mr. Chairman, that completes my presentation, and I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Merle. Committee, you have any questions that you'd like to ask at this point? Senator Pittman.
On the Fusion Center, do we, when we add analysts, do we get federal matching dollars from any sources, or is that all SGF that's paid out of?
I'd have to check for certain. I believe I'm fairly certain the Intelligence Fusion Center is primarily SGF funded. The agency does receive federal funds for a variety of purposes, but I'm fairly certain that particular center is largely SGF funded.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Merle, I was on a building construction committee meeting, and I thought there was something about some permanent walls in the new facility at down here on Topeka Boulevard. Is that in here?
Yep, I think what you're referencing is the State Defense Building remodel. The State Defense Building is located on Topeka Boulevard, just a couple blocks south of here. And so the project was originally envisioned to remodel the existing structure. That will occur. However, they do have, part of the project is to add an addition for the State Emergency Operations Center, and that addition will be built to a higher standard to withstand severe weather. The challenge was the current structure. It was quite costly to reconfigure that or to reinforce that structure. So the cheaper option was to build the new addition.
Okay, thank you.
Merle, that was federal funds too, what?
Correct. The remodel of the State Defense Building is all federal funds from the American Rescue Plan Act.
Any other questions? We're on page 24, when you was talking the Hayes Armory, the second paragraph says plans for utilizing or repurposing the current armory are in development. And that's in the floodplain? I heard floodplain in there, so.
That's correct. So there is an existing armory that I think was built in the 1930s or perhaps later. That's built in a space that's below a floodplain. It has been utilized. I'm not aware that it's not currently sitting in water. The challenge was if they wanted to build a new one, it seemed unwise to build that in a floodplain. So that facility still exists, and I think the agency is developing plans on whether they want to retain that structure and continue it for some other purpose, or in some instances, armories are sometimes returned back to the communities.
So my opinion is we got to be very careful on repurposing things in the floodplain. That's my only comment. Is there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we'll have the Adjutant General Department, Brigadier General Michael Vinerdi. I hope I said that right, Michael. Okay. Welcome to Subcommittee, and thank you for being here. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for having me here today to talk about the Adjutant General's Department. I am Brigadier General Mike Vinerdi, the Adjutant General of Kansas. In an effort to save some time, Merle, thank you for the articulate description of our budget request that you just provided, and some fantastic details about what we do across the agency. That will actually let me shorten up my comments today, so thank you. Gentlemen, I'll give you a quick, brief overview of what the Adjutant General Department is responsible for. So I basically wear three hats. So as the Adjutant General, I'm responsible for the Kansas National Guard, to include the Kansas Army National Guard and the Kansas Air National Guard, the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, and then lastly, the Kansas Homeland Security Office. Collectively, as Merle stated, that's over 7,000 men and women who work in the department. Additionally, we account for providing support to the Kansas wing of the Civil Air Patrol. Our portfolio is broad, and our mission is to protect life, property, through planning, coordination, synchronization of state and federal resources, and provide a ready military, emergency management, and homeland capability for Kansas and the United States. Your support and budgeting assistance is critical to our agency accomplishing these functions. I'll start off with deferred maintenance, rehabilitation, and repair. First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the investments you've made over the last couple of years in the Adjutant General's Department. Merle addressed the entirety of it, but I'll hit a couple in specific. So thank you for the $18 million that have been appropriated for the Hayes Readiness Center. We look forward to that construction being completed and getting a first world-class armory for our soldiers out there. Additionally, thank you for the investment in the State Defense Building and the new State Emergency Operations Center. It'll be very important to have that built to a standard that will resist an F5 tornado. So we're very much looking forward to that and getting that complete. As Merle stated, this year we don't have any big asks like those that we had previously. We do have 38 armories that run across the Army National Guard, and then Merle referred to our two wings and the Air National Guard, and so we don't refer to those as armories or buildings. We refer to those as installations, and they have several buildings on those installations, as several of you have visited those in the past. The next thing I'll talk about is in category is disaster funding. So the state is historically responsible for 10% matching on disaster funds. Local governments pay 15%, and the federal government pays 75%. Currently, we have 7 disasters from previous years that are still requiring state funding, and we're asking for a total of $13 million. We have 1 new disaster from severe storms in July of 2023 that was declared after the budget submission. With respect to the budget in its entirety, with the support of the governor and legislature, we are well-resourced across the agency to do our jobs. We fully support the governor's budget request. We have 3 main agency budget enhancement requests that I'd like to highlight to you. So Merle did a great job in providing the details of what those requests are. Hopefully, as I stand in front of you today, I can provide the so what. First off, with our Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center. Gentlemen, this is my top priority. We're requesting 2 additional full-time equivalents for the Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center, specifically a deputy director for operations and a senior analyst. Our KFC is the sole entity in Kansas that can directly access classified information, and that's at the top secret level, and provide this threat information to cleared leaders and experts. Without the 2 positions, KFC is unable to pace with increasing demand, endangering its mission to protect life, liberty, and property in the state. We are requesting $260,000 total for salary, benefits, and equipment. Next is the Forbes Field engineering request. That is, as stated prior, a request for 1 full-time equivalent. And I think Merle did a great job of attributing what that need is for. And that is, as we're also requesting funds to make sure that we keep up with our installation buildings and armories, this one specifically will help us get after that with those buildings associated to Forbes Field. And so the ask there is just over $16,000, which would then be matched with $48,000 covered by federal funds. The third one I want to talk about today is our web hosting request. It's a request for just over $22,000 to update our Kansas Adjutant General Department website. It's outdated, difficult to maintain, and vulnerable from a security standpoint, and it is not in compliance with current statutory and regulatory requirements for a .gov website, including the Americans with Disabilities Act. So in closing, we're requesting budget enhancements of 3 full-time equivalents and just under $300,000. The Adjutant General's Department will remain vigilant, focused on threats, and ready to protect the state of Kansas and our great country. Your support is critical to military readiness, homeland security, and emergency management across Kansas. Thank you for your continued unwavering support. I stand ready for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, General. I got three things. Thank you for your service and all your staff. I appreciate the National Guard here and all the things they do, especially over in my community over on the northeast side of Kansas where we have the beaches and everything else so great over there. But one thing, ks.gov sounds a lot like KTAG. And I just wish you could change that name a little bit because it sounds so confusing to me. But that's just a personal little small thing. It's Kansas TAG. I don't know. You know, the K-tag is, of course, our tolling system.
Sure.
That's going to go fully automatic soon. Second thing is on the Fusion Center, I'm a big supporter of it. You know, recently we had that hack into the judicial system. I know that's not necessarily the purview of what your intent, you know, everything you do there. But how do we know how much to invest in that? You know, we're going to invest, and I'm supportive of these 2 new positions. But how do we know we're getting? Was there a metric that we get out of that we say, hey, this is? And I know we can't go with threat stopped or anything like that, and I know it's important. I fully appreciate and support it, but when the questions come about how much to invest there, why not double the amount versus two positions, or why not 2 less? You know, how do we justify that type of thing?
So that's a great question. I don't know what the metric would be on proving the value that Fusion Center provides to the state and nation, quite frankly. The true value of what occurs in that facility are the partnerships. And that is as that team partners with law enforcement, business, academia, and the protection they do in particular, for me, it's critical infrastructure. Because if I can't get our forces from point A to point B when I need to, that's tremendously important to me. So things across multiple portfolios that occur, clearly I can't talk about them all here today. I'll tell you that in a generality, 3 spaces that those personnel and professionals work in are a biothreat capability, a cyber portfolio capability, and then a really important one as well is foreign malign influence. And so there are, as you well know, there are people out there and nations out there that maybe not necessarily wish us the best of intentions. And so it's great that we have professionals dedicated to scanning, analyzing, and providing analysis to leaders so they can make better decisions.
Thank you for that. I'll be interested in continuing that discussion over the next year. Just thinking about how we justify it more and more and make it even more critical, and so the public knows that what we're doing there is super critical. Last thing is, are we doing okay in terms of our grants, our National Guard scholarships out there to the communities to help recruitment and bring people into the National Guard? I mean, are they being utilized right now? And
Yes, sir, they are. And if we haven't provided you the data on that, we have that readily available, and we certainly can. To my knowledge, thank you for the support in the tuition assistance program for our National Guard. I believe we're at circa $4 million to take care of that program, and it is absolutely valuable in making sure that not only can we recruit, but retain great soldiers and airmen across our agency.
sure, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Senator Bellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today, all of you guys. Appreciate you. Military, 100% behind you guys. And I think going forward here, your jobs are more important than they've ever been. With the open borders and the illegals coming in and terrorists, we're going to have a terrible situation one of these days. And you guys are our front line. I appreciate you. The drugs coming into this country, the drugs coming into Kansas. I was at a meeting last week. Kansas is number 2 per capita in deaths from opioids and fentanyl. Number 2 in the nation. You guys have a tough job. Thank you for doing that. My other question is, you said you had another disaster in July after you had submitted your information. What is that, and what's the amount on it?
So that was a severe weather that occurred in earlier, I believe, in the spring. Or it was actually severe storms in July of 2023, and it was a declared emergency.
Do you have an amount on that, or?
No, sir, I don't, but I can absolutely get that data, and we can provide that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And sir, to your point, I appreciate your comments on the National Guard and its implications with protecting our homeland. I will say that in some of those instances you're referring to, we also have to tip our hat to our partners with law enforcement.
Yes, thank you. They are very important. You know, some of the things that have happened I've been living way in western Kansas. I live in Goodland, if you all know where that's at. That's way out there. There's been 2 vans stopped in Wallace County, one of the smallest counties in the state. Sex trafficking, 2 of them in the last year here. Garden City, Kansas, they arrested an illegal with 10,000 fentanyl-laced pills. I mean, this isn't just a big city deal. This is impacting our area. And like I said, we've got the National Guard in Colby, and I appreciate him being there, and the new armory in Hayes. We support you guys.
Proud to serve, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions, committee? I have one, Brigadier General, just to kind of help me. You'd mentioned the 25-75 state federal match. I thought I'd read somewhere, we get to read a lot of stuff. You know how that goes. Was it at 90-10 at one point?
Sir, so that is a question with multiple answers and branches and sequels. So the mystery to state and federal relationships on matching, it can go anywhere from a 100% zero relationship down to a 25-75. There's multiple variations of how that relationship exists, and it all depends on what the intent of the expenditure is for. And so if I can get some data to you regarding that, but there are just multiple strings to answer that question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions, again, thank you, sir, for being here. And I think at this point, we'll take and deliberate. You guys okay with that? Presentation. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the governor's recommendation on Adjutant General's department.
Is that for 24, 25?
Yes, 24 and 25.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. You doing
C-post?
both of these?
C-post.
Okay, next on the agenda, we will be hearing from the Kansas Commission of Peace Officer Standards and Training. And with us here today is Shirley Morrow with KLRD Budget Analyst. Shirley, welcome to committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee. Also here today to represent Kansas Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training is Doug Schroeder. So C-Post is located in Wichita, Kansas. It's a regulatory body that provides the citizens of Kansas with qualified, trained, and professional peace officers. They also maintain a central registry of law enforcement officers, demographics, qualifications, and employment history. And they conduct criminal administrative investigations related to violations of the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center and may suspend, revoke, or deny certification of a law enforcement training center, or officer, sorry. If I may, Mr. Chair, if you would turn to page 3. The bottom half of that page, you will see a bar graph with a line that shows the ending balance. I just want to make the committee aware. The green bars are the revenue, the orange bars are expenditures, and you'll notice over the last 3 or 4 years, the expenditures exceed the revenues, and the ending balance is going down from 1.4 million 5 years ago to a little over 700,000, so that might be something to look at in the future. That Peace Officer Standards and Training Fund is funded through the docket fees, and that's described below. If I may continue, sir, on page 5 is the budget for the current year, fiscal year 2024. You will see there that the agency is requesting $1.1 million. This is an increase of $13,000. And again, that's that pay plan salary adjustment for the current year, and the governor concurs with the agency's request.
Is there any questions so far, committee? Okay, Shirley, let's continue.
On page 6, you will know there's a comparison between the actual expenditures for fiscal year 2023 and the agency's request for 2024. There is an increase of $100,000, special revenue funds. The major increase was commodities and gasoline and supplies, and then capital outlay. If you will remember last year, they had asked for some additional funding for security and safety measures, and that's the primary reason for the increase there in 24. I don't have a lot more to say. This is going to be one of your easiest budgets.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any other questions? Okay, Shirley, thank you.
I've got fiscal year 2025.
Oh, okay, 25.
Sorry, page 7.
That was short page. That's the-
Yes. Well, this one's even shorter.
Yeah, that's what I said.
They're requesting $1 million. This is a decrease of $65,000. And again, this is primarily a decrease because of the added money last year for safety and security. That's not in their budget for 25, so that's what the decrease is, and the governor concurs.
Committee, any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward.
Now I'm done.
Now you're done. Thank you. Okay, at this point, we will ask Douglas Schroeder, Executive Director of CPOST, forward. Douglas, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairperson and Subcommittee. As always, the Kansas Department of Budget and KLRD through Shirley Morrow has done an exceptional job of analyzing our budget. I will keep my comments brief and appropriate to the budget. We are devoted to advancing the law enforcement profession. That is our mission. I do want to remind the subcommittee that the 24 and 25 budget was prepared with performance measures and outcomes in mind. I know that's important to many senators. Our FY25 budget is lower than FY24 because of that enhancement for physical security measures that we made at our office or in the process of making. And we are grateful that we received that enhancement this last year. I do want to reiterate one point, though. The post is solely funded by docket fees collected through the municipal court and not through the district courts, only municipal courts. That docket fee has been declining for 7 years now. In fact, if that docket fee 7 years ago in 2017 would have remained stable over these past 7 years, we wouldn't be talking about needing another funding source or more funding. However, it has diminished quite a bit, as you can see from the graphs that Ms. Morrow provided you. I believe that this year and FY25, we will be okay. But when we get to fiscal year 26, 1 year from now, when we start these conversations and hearings once again, I will be asking for some consideration of either changing the funding source or increasing the fees. I know I have some ideas that I would like to pitch then. There are many departments and agencies that are getting away from fee funding, mostly because of the instability, and our department is no less. And so I do want to reiterate the fact that we're okay at this point, but we will need to discuss this in greater length next year. And it's with that that I thank you for your investment in Kansas law enforcement and for everything that you do at the state level. And I would stand for any questions.
Thank you. Senator Billinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is that fee?
It's $5 per docket fee in municipal court.
$5. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And just a clarification on it, it says here that the docket fees went down because of the decrease in number of municipal court cases, which is a result of court closures in response to COVID-19. You anticipate that that's going to pick back up?
You know, so we can trace docket fees declining back to 2017, prior to COVID. So maybe it had a piece of it, but it's been declining before COVID. So no, I do not expect that to pick up. Matter of fact, I will tell you that I've doubled the income from July to December to get a year's average, and it's going to be lower again this next year. So it's not picking up. It's falling off at the same pace.
It's ironic because we were just talking to the bids folks and we were having an increase in the number of cases that they're having, but this is kind of separate from that, isn't it? Dockets are.
And I'm not sure, who were you talking to, sir?
Bids is the Indigent Defense Services Fund, who are seeing an increase in the number of their felony level, not necessarily municipal court level docket fees.
So that would probably be the difference, is that the felonies do go through district court, whereas municipal courts do not get that.
And did you have that facility, wasn't it in a rough part of Wichita, was that?
You know, last year we did attempt to get some funding for a facility, and I appreciate corresponding with some of you about that. We tried through the ARPA funds. That did not work. Our second kind of stopgap measure was to ask for the enhancements to physical security measures, which we were very thankful to be awarded.
Thanks.
Committee, any other questions for Douglas? Sir, I was wondering, how do you measure your accomplishments for like 2023? You know, when you look at things, what was successful? What challenges do you have?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. In our mission of wanting to support and increase Kansas law enforcement professionalism, we're trying to increase communication and agencies complying with regulations and state laws. I've got actually a newsletter going out here real soon that claims 2 wins for last year. First of all, we had fewer officers this last year than the previous year. Need an extension in their training hours. So they're getting their training hours increasingly more by the deadline, as they should be. And then secondly, the amount of agencies that are requesting C-post records prior to making a hiring decision has increased tremendously in the last year. Those are 2 areas of communication. And of course, that's important to them and to us because we want them to have a good picture of a law enforcement officer's background and any employment and training issues that may be in that background. So those are a couple of I guess, quantitative measurements. Qualitative measurements would include satisfaction of our stakeholders. The overall thought of Kansas citizens on how we are doing as being the gatekeepers to Kansas law enforcement professionalism, and of course our stakeholders of the local and county and also state law enforcement leaders.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay, if not, Mr. Schroeder, thank you. And
Thank you very much.
okay. Okay, we'll deliberate at this time. Any questions? Any discussion on this? I'd entertain a motion then.
Yes, I'd make a motion, we accept the governor's rec on K-post,
For 24, 25?
24 and 25, correct.
A second? Okay, got a motion and a second that we accept 24, 25, governor's recommendation. Is there any other discussion? If not, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to number 3 on the chart here, and we are going to be listening to the Kansas Sentencing Commission, and Shirley Morrow from KLRD, Budget Analyst, will get us started. Thank you, Shirley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. And again, Scott Schultz is here from the Kansas Sentencing Commission as well. The Kansas Sentencing Commission was created in 1989 to develop sentencing guidelines, model, or grid based on fairness and equity to provide a mechanism for linking justice and correction policies. They also use statistical modeling to develop prison population projections and legislative impacts. Mr. Chair, one of the things you and I discussed yesterday are a number of reports that throughout session that we received from the Kansas Sentencing Commission. I did look up, and I just wanted to give you a few of the things that we've gotten so far this year. House Bill 2490, they've provided impact, and these are bed populations, what increase there would be to the bed populations for the corrections. SB 335, which increases penalties on passing emergency vehicles. They've provided a report on that one. And then SB 341 is an impact for driving privileges. So any legislation that comes before you, I get a report and the legislature gets a report. They're very similar to like a fiscal impact statement. These are bed population statements. Just so you know, last year during the session, there were over 60 reports provided. So that's one of the things that they do. I will go over the budget for fiscal year 2024. That is on page 5. They did have a state general fund reappropriation of $2.7 million. The majority of that, $2.6 million, was SB 123, the Substance Abuse Treatment Program Fund. That's pass-through funding that they have in their budget. So the agency requests a revised estimate of $14.7 million. And again, this is primarily state general fund. In 2024, this is a decrease of $4,000, all funds, and an increase of $11,000 state general fund from the approved amount. Again, and you're going to hear this on many of these budgets, there's not quite $9,000 in the pay plan shortfall. And again, you talked earlier about the bill's already been introduced. And then there are some adjustments in increases in contractual services and capital outlay with offsetting decreases in salaries and wages and other assistance. The contractual services are increased for a multi-year contract with Carillon Behavioral Health and Domo. The decrease is in salaries and wages to 2 open positions. And then the decrease in other assistance is not in expending the entire amount reappropriated. Again, that's that SB 123 Substance Abuse Treatment Program. The governor recommends a revised estimate of $12.3 million, primarily state general fund. This is a decrease of $2.4 million or 16%. The decrease includes a correction in the agency's budget of $2,000 and then a lapse of $2.4 million, which is the reappropriation of the substance abuse treatment program.
Is there any questions at this point on 2024? If not, we'll proceed.
So on page 7, again, you have the bar chart of actual expenditures of 23 compared to 24. And this is the agency's request. And again, the increase primarily is the substance abuse treatment program. Page 8, fiscal year 2025. The agency's request is $17 million, includes $16.9 million state general fund. This is an increase of $2.2 million or 15% above the 24 request. The increase is due to 3 enhancement requests. Minus the enhancements, the 2025 request excuse me, is $78,000 below the 24 request. They have a Domo maintenance fee request for an increase. This is a multi-year maintenance agreement to further automate their research reporting, and they're asking for $15,000, state general fund. The second request is to expand the SB 123 substance abuse treatment program, and that's $2.2 million. And then the Carillon maintenance fee, this is a contract that tracks both the SB 123 program and the RAFT program, which is the Recovery from Addiction for Treatment. And they're asking for an additional $75,548. On page 9, you will see the governor's recommendation. The governor recommends $12.3 million, including $12.2 state general fund. This is an all funds decrease of $4.7 million or 27%. This is due to the governor making a few adjustments. The first is a small correction in the agency's administrative program. There's also an adjustment of $2.3 million on the SB 123 program. And then the enhancement request of $2.2 million. The governor does not recommend that enhancement. The governor does recommend the Domo maintenance fee increase, but between the time the agency prepared their budget and the time for the governor's recommendation, that was recalculated to $14,000. So it's $1,000 less than what the agency had originally requested. The last one, the Carillon maintenance contract, the governor does recommend that request. However, again, in the time between the agency's request and the governor's recommendation, they've asked for an additional $91,000, which the governor agreed to, for a total of $166,000. The enhancements are shown again on page 10, but I've gone over those. They have two programs. They have an administration program and then the pass-through money, which is the SB 125 or 123 substance abuse program.
Any questions, committee? Okay, that pretty well covers it, doesn't it, Shirley?
That covers it.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
Okay, at this point, we will ask Scott Schultz, Executive Director of Kansas Sentencing Commission, to come forward. And Scott, welcome to committee.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Good morning, members of the committee. Good to see you again. Welcome back to Topeka. On behalf of the 17-member commission, we're very happy to be here today and to talk about the agency's budget. I apologize, there is nothing in my testimony that can help with a flat tax situation. You guys are going to have to work on that yourself, I think. So, I will note our division, the budget analyst, Stephanie Buchanan, is also here with us today. I wanted to just talk briefly about the budgets. Simply put, we are okay with FY24 and 25 governor's recs on this. Part of the situation that we've had is that, and you can kind of see that in my testimony to some degree, but if you recall, the commission is basically our value that we bring as an agency is that we collect all of the criminal justice data from KBI, from DOC. We collect felony sentencing data ourselves, and then are basically I kind of call it a funnel. We bring all that information under one roof. We're a freestanding agency, so we're not beholden to DOC, KBI, Attorney General. I will not say that we're not beholden, but we are accountable, just like I'm accountable to my commission, and that we are accountable to the legislature and the governor's office. So that places us in a situation where we can provide objective data on criminal justice to you and other stakeholders. So part of that is, as Shirley indicated, we have two programs, the operations and the Senate Bill 123 Substance Abuse Treatment Program. That SB 123 program has been in existence for 25 years and has been a very successful program throughout the time that it has been in existence and administered by the agency. In fact, we actually have expanded that program, thanks to the legislature, 3 times in the last 5 years. On the operations side, I apologize for jumping around, we have a research department that essentially collects all the data and then does all the data analysis. And so I have a director of research, and his team do a fantastic job in doing things such as, during the summer, we look at prison population projections. Why? Because the statute requires us to do it. We take all of DOC's data that they have, we turn it around in 6 weeks and give prison population projections for a 10-year projection. Our computer model, as you can see on page 3, or the attachment, that gives you an idea of what our projected amounts are versus actual, and that kind of gives you a 10-year look since 2014. As you will note, the big decrease that occurred as part of COVID. This was one of those things that COVID actually in the criminal justice world and in the prison population world actually solved a lot of the capacity issues as a result of that. That was, I think, the unintended consequence. What I will tell you, however, is that based upon our recent prison population projection, is that we're bouncing back from that. And we are almost back to pre-COVID numbers as far as capacity. You know that in speaking with Secretary Zamuda, that not only do we have physical capacity issues to worry about, but we also have staffing capacity. And that has come into issue however many years, 5, 6 years now, that the legislature has had to deal with salary and wages issues with them. So what I can tell you, though, from our agency standpoint, is we are back on track as far as capacities are concerned. COVID is, the courts are back doing jury trials, which are normally the more serious crimes. And we are seeing an increase in sentencing journal entries, which is how we actually get our data. What you can see, though, is based upon the projections that we do and the actual prison populations, that 10-year average is 1.68% as far as error rate. That is fantastic. The computer model is working, and that is something that, and why is that important to you? Well, that's important because we can actually give you data that keeps taxpayers from spending millions of dollars on a new prison if the numbers aren't going to actually be there. So with the model that we are currently using, 5% on either side would be good. I require our folks to be within 2% on either side. And so we are continuing to keep that as far as a performance measure. I think the chair asked about that previously with Doug, that this is one of the main drivers as far as performance measures that we have. Some of the other things that we're doing is I am very much keyed towards, my philosophy obviously is to try and do as much as we can with technology. And so one of the last things in the process of getting a defendant through the system is sentencing. Unfortunately, that is done by paper currently. And we have been working for about a little over a year now to digitize that process. And so while electronic filing has been going on with the courts for a number of years, 6 or 7 years, we are at a point now where we actually have, Shirley talked about Domo. Domo Incorporated is the vendor that we're using to actually make that happen. And so we are in the third pilot study, working on that with the assistance of probation officers, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges around the state. We are also working with Domo to also make distribution of criminal justice information easier. We have a treasure trove of data that practitioners use for budgeting purposes, but also just to simply look at their own county or judicial district to see what kind of information, sentencing information is out there. And so we are working with Domo to provide a better way to provide those visualizations on the website, and we anticipate that completion by the end of fiscal year '24. As I mentioned on the Senate Bill 123 program, as far as our budget is concerned, about over $8 of every $10 that we get appropriated goes to, is a pass-through to substance abuse treatment providers. We are the bank, essentially, that administers once the treatment providers send the invoices in, then we pay those out. And so, like I said, eight out of $10 that we receive in SGF actually goes to that funding in your communities all over the state. We actually, the legislature expanded the program at our request last time. We believe that the expansion that's being done with the program is going to be slow here in '24, so we really haven't pushed the issue as far as the extra funds. Legislature appropriated $1.8 million. We think that's going to be plenty for the entire program. 25, I have some questions. But after talking with Division of the Budget about it, we believe that if we start seeing trends where things are picking up, we may request that in '25. But as it stands, we are comfortable at this standpoint with what the governor's recommendations are. Those enhancement requests that we made Two of them were simply, we entered into contracts with Domo, and then our vendor for SB 123 is Carillon, who also does the block grant. We entered into 3-year agreements with them, so those are fixed amounts, and so those are the amounts that would allow us to actually pay for those. So that, again, ask you to adopt the recs for 24 and 25. Happy to answer any questions and stand at this time.
Committee, have any questions?
So good in 24 and 25, you're going to be possibly asking for an enhancement, or?
Part of the during the fiscal impact, as far as the bill that went through that the legislature appropriated the $1.8 million, we went back and looked and potentially believe that there's actually going to be more individuals that are going to be eligible for the program. We don't have any control. The judge basically, if criteria by statute is met, the judge orders these folks into treatment, which community corrections, while they're on probation, supervises them in the community. So we don't have any control over saying you can't go, you can't go. The judge is basically the one that's going to do that. Most of the offenses that are newly eligible, burglary for the example, that's one of the top 5 offenses, felony offenses in the state. So we know we're going to have quite a few folks. Now, it may not be substance abuse related, so in that case, they wouldn't be eligible. But theft is another one. That is there's a lot of felony thefts that are committed in the state. So we are, in addition, I have my, it's basically just with a caveat that because of those types of offenses that we have quite a few of, we think that we're going to actually potentially have more offenders than we estimated last session when we asked for the 1.8 million.
Do you get any funds from the Attorney General's office for the opioid settlements, or is there any of that money flowing into this, or?
No, but we'd love to initiate that conversation. I think that would,
curious.
We have talked about a lot of times some of the issues with even potentially pulling funds from problem gambling if there's extra funds and that type of thing. But certainly the opioid situation, that would be a prime situation to potentially look at. Thank you for that question.
You bet, Scott. Thank you for being here today.
Senator Pittman.
Thank you, and thank you for presentation here. I've got 2 questions. Maybe I'll just have one here, but when we look at the reason a sentencing commission was created, 89 is develop a sentencing guideline model or grid based upon fairness and equity. In my district, sometimes there's some folks that are very interested in criminal justice reform, these types of things. This being Black History Month, NAACP has taken that on a couple of times over the last few years. I understand that you are a data-driven sentencing commission and you do a great job of providing the beds and the estimates and those types of things. If there was folks at the state level that wanted to review things like how our laws are balanced or in terms of sentencing, I guess that's not your role to push that agenda, right? Your role would be more to provide data to support and an objective criteria look at how many felony laws we have, for example, and how they relate to each other and how they weight against each other. Is that correct?
We can actually move in that direction, Senator. The commission that I serve contains Secretary of Corrections, Prisoner Review Board Chair. We have a couple legislators from the Senate side and the House side. We have the Attorney General's office. We have probation officers that have. We have judges. We have an appellate judge that's on as well. They all represent a cross-section of the criminal justice community. And so we currently have 5 bills right now in committee and House Corrections. So we do actually forward criminal justice reform efforts. And I turn into lobbyists during the legislative session to try and promote those bills and try and shepherd them through the system. So that would be something that having the data is actually one of the best ways to be able to support your cause. And so that would be something that I would welcome to be able, if there are issues, to bring that to whomever constituents that the commission represents. We actually vet a whole lot of those issues in our monthly meetings. And then at our workshop in September, we actually have a legislative committee that helps put together what the potential agenda will be. So I would welcome any constituents that you have to approach us.
Appreciate that. And my second question was, do you have data regionally? I say that like by judicial district maybe about sentencing trends and deviations from sentencing grids and those types of things by judicial district?
Absolutely. That's, and in fact, that's one of the things that we're working specifically on. We can do that right now with a request to our research department on our website. But what we're moving towards is actually having a dashboard visualization on the website that I can actually take the Second Judicial District, for example, or any other county for that matter, and drill down as far as I want to determine certain things, whether that be top crimes, felony crimes, gender, ethnicity, all of those things. In fact, even prison probation type of sentences that will allow people to be better informed on making decisions. That's what the legislative impacts do. We're usually in House Corrections, Senate Judiciary, and provide those legislative bed space impacts that certainly aren't definitive by any means on the bills, but they provide you more information to be better informed based upon the current data. If the statute itself has never been used, and in some cases we'll put in there has not been a single arrest or conviction in 6 years. In fact, we just did that. And so that gives you a better opportunity to understand, okay, this is a little used law, we're amending it, the significance about whether or not it's going to cause a bed impact is significantly reduced just because it's not being utilized as much. Thank goodness in most cases.
Makes total sense. And that would include use of some of the specialty courts that we authorized in the last couple of years?
Yes, and in fact, SB 123 is being used in those specialty courts, which is even better when they're a lot of times they're stretched for dollars. This allows a better opportunity. That's one less thing that they have to fund is the substance abuse treatment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good questions. I'm kind of, the only thing I would add to that, I was wondering, how do you measure your accomplishments? We go through this kind of thing. Is there any kind of goals that you kind of set or things that you track? And
yeah, as you can see, like I indicated in the attachment, we try and stay under 2% as far as the actual versus the error rate on the prison population projections. The legislative bed space impacts, we track those as far as the number is concerned. I think Shirley indicated there was about 60. What we will actually do, though, after a bill is amended, we will go back and actually determine, has the bill changed enough that we have to do yet another impact? And so we did 114 last year as well, usually somewhere between that and I think the most we've done is 190. And so we track all of that to make a determination of, depending on how things go during the session, we may be, I have about half my office works on legislative bed space impacts during the session. So it's one of the busier times for us. But those are the type of things that we're looking for performance measures. We track a myriad of things, but those are just a couple things.
thank you. Any other questions? Senator Billinger.
No question. I'd make a motion we accept the governor's rec for 24 and 25.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Scott, thank you for your presentation. That concludes our subcommittee meeting today, so meeting adjourned.